The bow and arrow is a ranged weapon system consisting of an elastic launching device and long shafted projectiles. Archery is the art, practice, or skill of using bows to shoot arrows. A person who shoots arrows with a bow is called a bowman or an archer. Someone who makes bows is known as a bowyer. Someone who makes arrows is a fletcher. And someone who manufactures metal arrowheads is an arrowsmith. Humans used bows and arrows for hunting and aggression long before recorded history. And the practice was common to many prehistoric cultures. They were important weapons of war from ancient history until the early modern period, where they were rendered increasingly obsolete by the development of the more powerful and accurate firearms, and were eventually dropped from warfare. Today, bows and arrows are mostly used for hunting and sports. A bow consists of a semi-rigid but elastic arc with a high tensile bowstring joining the ends of the two limbs of the bow. An arrow is a projectile with a pointed tip and a long shaft with stabilizer fins towards the back, with a narrow notch at the very end to contact the bowstring. To load an arrow for shooting, this flexes the two limbs of the bow rearwards, which perform the function of a pair of cantilever springs to store elastic energy. Typically while maintaining the draw, the archer aims the shot intuitively or by sighting along the arrow. Then archer releases the draw, allowing the limb's stored energy to convert into kinetic energy transmitted via the bowstring to the arrow, propelling it to fly forward with high velocity. A container or bag for additional arrows for quick reloading is called a quiver. When not in use, bows are generally kept unstrung, meaning one or both ends of the bowstring are detached from the bow. This removes all residual tension on the bow and can help prevent it from losing strength or elasticity over time. Many bow designs also let it straighten out more completely, reducing the space needed to store the bow. Returning the bowstring to its ready-to-use position is called stringing the bow. The oldest known evidence of arrows comes from South African sites such as Sibudu Cave, where likely arrowheads have been found, dating from approximately 72,000 to 60,000 years ago. In Eurasia, the bow and arrow reappears around the Upper Paleolithic. After the end of the last glacial period, use of the bow seems to have spread to every inhabited region, except for Australasia and most of Oceania. The earliest probable arrowheads found outside of Africa has been discovered in 2020 in Efeheen Cave, Sri Lanka. It has been dated to 48,000 years ago. Bow and arrow hunting at the Sri Lanka site likely focused on monkeys and smaller animals, such as squirrels, Langley says. Remains of these creatures were found in the same sediment as the bone points. The earliest, definite remains of bow and arrow from Europe are possible fragments from Germany found at Mannheim-Vogelstang dated 17,500 to 18,000 years ago, and at Stellmore dated 11,000 years ago. Azilian points found in Grotte du Bichen, Switzerland, alongside the remains of both a bear and a hunter, with flint fragments found in the bear's third vertebra, suggest the use of arrows at 13,500 years ago. At the site of Nataruk in Turkana County, Kenya, obsidian bladelets found embedded in a skull and within the thoracic cavity of another skeleton suggest the use of stone-tipped arrows as weapons about 10,000 years ago. The oldest extant bows in one piece are the Elm Holmegard bows from Denmark, which were dated to 900 BCE. Several bows from Holmegard, Denmark, date 8,000 years ago. High-performance wooden bows are currently made following the Holmegard design. The Stellmore bow fragments from northern Germany were dated to about 8000 BCE. But they were destroyed in Hamburg during the Second World War, before carbon-14 dating was available. Their age is attributed by archaeological association. The bow was an important weapon for both hunting and warfare from prehistoric times until the widespread use of gunpowder weapons in the 16th century. It was also common in ancient warfare, even although certain cultures would not favor them. Greek poet Archilochus expressed scorn for fighting with bows and slings. Organized warfare with bows ended in the early to mid-17th century in Western Europe, but it persisted into the 19th century in Eastern cultures. including hunting and warfare in the New World. In the Canadian Arctic, bows were made until the end of the 20th century for hunting caribou. For instance, at Igloolik, the bow has more recently been used as a weapon of tribal warfare in some parts of sub-Saharan Africa. An example was documented in 2009 in Kenya when Kisii people and Kalenjin people clashed, resulting in 4 deaths. The British upper class led a revival of archery as a sport in the late 18th century. Sir Ashton Lever, an antiquarian and collector, formed the Toxophilite Society in London in 17